You can use Instagram stories to grow your business, and today I'm going to teach you how to do just that. Stories is a great way to build an intimate connection with your audience. In fact, I would even argue that it's where the majority of users spend most of their time on Instagram. At least I know for me, when I open the Instagram app, I tap through stories before I do anything else, whether it's watch reels, look someone up specifically, or even get to my own content. You can let me know in the comments if you do the same. Nonetheless, stories is a great opportunity to allow people more insight into who you are, what your business is, and it can allow you to stay front of mind for your ideal customer. Today, I'm going to explain the different types of content you should be posting on stories. I'll explain things that you should avoid doing, how you can work to improve your engagement, and I'll also offer a few bonus tips at the end, so be sure to stick around for that. Okay, so generally speaking, I like to think there's about 7 different types of Instagram story content that we can be posting. And this relates closely to the Instagram feed post strategy that I use and I talk about in this video over here, which if you have watched that video, you're gonna notice some similarities and overlap in the information I'm about to share. But it's not all the same, so don't worry. And if we think about it, it makes sense because just like we use our feed content to build our brand, our stories are essentially doing the same thing. In fact, our stories are the opportunity for us to talk about our offer without having to directly talk about our offer, if that makes sense. Clear as mud? Let's go ahead and get into it. We'll talk about the different types of Instagram stories that you should be posting. So first up, we have behind the scenes content. Now this is content, just like it sounds, that shows the behind the scenes of what happens in your business. People want to see this. As humans, there's like this fascination with knowing how people do the things that they do. And you see with Instagram, when we have feed content like posts and reels, those are often highly curated. You can tell by watching them that this person has put a lot of time and effort into making it look aesthetically pleasing and to seem really well put together. Now, with behind the scenes content on Instagram stories, what you're allowing is your audience the chance to see what it's really like behind creating that content. And so for me, when I create this content, I like to do time lapses of me filming YouTube videos. I'll do flat lays of what my desk looks like, maybe take snippets and snapshots as I'm out and about doing things throughout the day, doing like a day in the life sort of vlogging, stories behind the scenes peek. Essentially, you want to give the viewer the insight into what it's really like to be the business owner and to run the business. Now, that being said, if your target audience isn't small business owners, you don't want to focus too heavily on this, but I do think it is a good way to kind of add that more personal touch to connect with your clients and customers, regardless of what kind of business you have. Next up, we have client stories or testimonials. And these are essentially just the opportunity for you to share proof that the product or service that you sell is in demand and that people actually like what you're selling. Because if other people are buying it, then that's usually a pretty good sign that whatever it is legit. Particularly if you are in like the launch phase of a product or service or program, this is a good opportunity to highlight why other people think it's so good, because I can sit here all day and tell you that every offer I have is super valuable and you're going to learn so much, but it's really important that you're getting that feedback from a third party, someone who's obviously not so biased and invested in the business, to decide whether or not it really is the right fit for you. And with that being said, as a business owner, I think it's really important that we're not just simply like screenshotting the review and posting it. I like to highlight key phrases or sentences that people say and then add extra text explaining why this is so important or why this highlights one of the features of the offer that I'm trying to promote. All that to say, don't be afraid to reach out and ask people for their feedback, because I think that that is a really important way to be able to gain it, because sometimes people aren't just gonna reach out to you and say like, oh my God, I loved your product. But if you're willing to ask them whether or not they liked it, they will be willing to share a positive experience if their experience has been positive. Next up, we have your journey. Now, this content, just like it sounds, is all about you, why you started your business, what your journey to becoming a business owner has been like, and maybe lessons that you've learned along the way. You can also include maybe things that you wish you knew before you started, and really just allow people, again, sort of that insight into what the journey through entrepreneurship has actually been like. This again helps to improve your relatability and build that personal connection. And again, if your target audience for your product or service is not small business owners, I would only sprinkle this content in here and there. but it is really important to be able to build that connection. Now let's talk about values and community building. This is the type of Instagram story that allows your audience to really connect with you and your brand. Maybe you're a brand that gives back a percentage of your sales to a particular cause. Be sure to show up and to talk about that and talk about why it's important to you. Maybe your target audience is business owners and you've been able to create this flexible lifestyle through the productivity hacks that you have. Be sure to show up and share those and talk about it. Values and community building posts are all about relating to your audience's experience and fostering those relationships. These kind of stories put your audience into the story and motivate and inspire them to take action. And I actually did this the other day with a reel. So I posted a reel with my goals for March. And essentially what I did was I posted it to my story and then I encouraged people to go and comment what their goals for the month were. And then through that experience, one of my clients actually got inspired to write her own goals. So not only did she reshare my reel to her story, but then she created her own reel where she was setting her goals and shared that to her story as well. So it just kind of allows you the chance to share what's going on in your life and have your audience recognize like, hey, that's my experience too. And then they can share it with their audience as well. And it creates this kind of ripple effect. Next up, we have offers and invitations. These are stories where you actually share what your offer is. And this is where knowing your ideal client, check out this video if you don't know that yet, is so important because you're actually using these stories to explain why the offer that you have for them is a perfect fit for their needs. The reality is that no one is really following you as closely as you think they are. So where you as the business owner might think like, I know what I'm selling. Obviously everyone knows what I'm selling. I'm business owner XYZ. It's obvious that I sell ABC. The reality is they don't, and you need to be the one to show up and share it with them. I actually do this a lot through combining it with my behind the scenes content. So generally I'll show up and do some like B-roll footage where it says like, oh, I'm just working on offer ABC. And then I'll do the next post where I'm like, oh, you don't know what offer ABC is? Click here to learn more. And so this kind of offers people that like insight and behind the scenes look, but then it also piques their interest into learning like, what is offer ABC? I need to know. I think a lot of us are afraid of being really salesy if we show up and talk about our offers on our Instagram stories, but there's a few things I want to keep in mind, or I want you to keep in mind, if that's the way you feel about selling on your Instagram stories. First of all, again, no one is following you as closely as you might think they are. So you might feel like they're gonna be like, oh my God, she's posting about this thing again. I can't believe she keeps selling her products. Most people don't see everything you post, so just keep that in mind. And then next, and more obviously, at the end of the day, you are a business. Businesses make money by selling the products, the services that they have to offer. And in order to make those sales, you need to talk about what you're selling. No one gets upset when Lululemon posts an Instagram story saying, hey, we just launched a bunch of new products, you should check it out. So don't be afraid to talk about what you're selling, okay? Okay, I have a couple more to go. Let's get into personal Instagram stories. Now, these are exactly what they sound like. They offer your audience a sneak peek, not behind the scenes of your business, but the behind the scenes of your actual life. So for me, I like to talk about coffee, different coffee shops that I visit. I share a lot about my dog, what I get up to on the weekends. It's up to you to share as much or as little as you want about your personal life. Personally, I like to err more on the side of less is more. But again, you're just kind of allowing yourself the opportunity to pull back the curtain a little bit, show people that there's a real human running this business, and allowing yourself to build that more personal side of your brand. Okay. Lastly, we have informational or educational posts. These are stories where you are teaching your audience something. Maybe you're sharing tips, maybe you're offering insight, maybe you're answering questions. I love to use the question box feature fairly regularly and have people have the opportunity to ask me whatever questions they want. That kind of allows me to not only position myself as an authority, but to, again, create that connection with people because they feel like they're working with me kind of one-on-one and have the opportunity to ask me questions directly. And again, this is just you building your authority in that space. So if you don't want to use the question box feature as a service-based business, you could literally just answer common questions that you get about the services that you offer or about your industry as a whole. And for product-based business owners, you could, again, kind of answer questions about the industry. So if we think about maybe like a skincare line business, they could talk about the importance of having a nighttime routine, chemicals you should avoid in your beauty products, maybe things that you should know about sun damage, just sort of tidbits of information that are going to make people see you as like, oh, this person actually knows what they're talking about and they are a reliable source of information. And while that might not be directly related to the product that you sell, building that know, like, and trust is going to be really important when it comes to deciding whether or not someone does want to buy whatever it is you're selling, because people want to buy from brands that they trust. So we're simply just focusing with this content on positioning ourselves in the market. Now let's just take a quick minute to review, and you can grab a screenshot here if you'd like. These are the 7 types of Instagram stories you should be posting. We have behind the scenes content, client stories, your journey, community building and values, offers and invitations, personal, and educational. Okay, so far we've talked about the different types of stories you should be posting, but I think it's important that we talk about a little bit more of the almost like technical side of things that you definitely should stop doing on your Instagram stories. And the biggest one that I would advise you to avoid doing is to only post one type of story. So whether it's that you only post like talking head content of you staring at the camera, whether it's you only posting content that you reshare from your own profile or from other people's profiles, or maybe you only share stories that are just a bunch of text explaining something on the screen. Either way, this is something I want you to reconsider, because when you think about stories on Instagram, I want you to think about any kind of social media or media content in general that you consume. What makes you as the viewer interested in continuing to look at that thing? And if you're just swiping through someone's story and it's the same thing over and over and over again, it's not very likely that you're going to want to stick around. And more often than not, when we do this and we post the same type of story over and over again, we're actually not providing any kind of additional value to the viewer's life. And just like on any other form of social media, we want to make sure that our goal with stories is to add value to the life of our potential consumer in order to build that know, like, and trust, and then eventually, hopefully, convert them into a paying client or grow our audience. And so that being said, you want to make sure you're keeping things interesting and sort of mixing up the way that your content actually looks. And so again, the best way that I think to do this is to really put yourself in the position of the consumer and think about, what kind of stories do I like to view and how can I portray that in the content that I'm creating? Okay, so next up, let's talk about some tips that I have for you if you are someone who is struggling with engagement on your Instagram stories, or maybe you're finding that it fluctuates a lot. These are some key tips that you can use to hopefully help to stabilize that issue. And so first up, this one might be a little bit obvious, is to just make sure that you're not posting too many stories. You know it, we've all seen it. We like to call it in the social media space the like ant trail of Instagram stories. When someone just posts so many stories, you open it and you immediately just think, nope, 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 swiping to the next. People are going to drop off if they see that. I don't know if it's like a psychological thing, but I think it kind of ties into this idea that no one is as obsessed with us as we are obsessed with ourselves. And so I just think that no one really wants to sit through 50 stories of one person. They want you to be succinct, they want you to get to the point, and they want to know what's in it for them. So general rule of thumb is to try and keep your Instagram stories to less than 10 slides a day. Now, this also being said, if you are someone who has done this, or maybe just in general, you've seen your engagement on Instagram start to decline, what I would advise you to do is to let your stories expire. Now, I generally do this once a week, usually on Saturday or Sunday. I will go 24 hours without posting on Instagram stories. And pretty much every single time that I do that, I see a huge spike in my engagement the following day, provided that you're actually posting something on that following day that encourages people to engage with your stories. So this is a great opportunity to use the interactive features that Instagram offers, such as polls, sliders, and question boxes. If you follow me, you know that I use these stickers every single day. Every morning, I post the same mirror selfie with my to-do list for the day and a question box or poll that asks you what the vibe is for the day. And I am not kidding when I say that it is crazy the number of people who have either DM'd me or like friends in real life who are both content creators and just regular people saying that they love this story format, because it not only helps to keep them accountable to their own to-do list, but it also kind of allows them that opportunity to really check in and be like, hey, what is the vibe today? How am I feeling? And so if this is a format that you're interested in using, steal it from me. I didn't invent it. I'm pretty sure I stole it from someone else. So it works and you should definitely use it. Or use some kind of story format that encourages people to click on the stickers on the screen. Okay, now let's talk about how we can use our highlights. Now, if you're not familiar, the highlights feature is basically where you have the opportunity to save past stories into almost like an archive that's public that other people can see. And now, honestly, the information I'm about to share with you is something I usually reserve for my Instagram audit clients. So today is your lucky day. Lucky you. I'm going to give you the inside information on what you should be doing with your highlights. Too often I see people not using highlights at all or using them incorrectly, myself included. This is something that's been on my to-do list for forever that I need to get around to updating. But I'm going to give you what you should be doing. So do as I say, not as I do. Essentially, you want to think of your highlights as sort of this like brochure or preview to allow them to gauge whether or not the content that you create is relevant to them as the consumer. And so with that, it's super important that you have certain categories in your highlights. I think that everyone, business or not, should have a highlight that explains who they are or who their business is. This could have your origin story, how you got started, background on the business, or simply just information about who you are as the business owner, to give people the opportunity to kind of vibe you out and feel if you are a right fit for the type of content that they're looking for. If you have a service-based business, you should have highlights for each of the individual services that you offer. So when I had a yoga studio, I had a highlight about yoga, a highlight about meditation, a highlight about retreats, etc. If you have a product-based business, you could do highlights for each of the products, but if you have lots of products, I would just kind of have a products highlight that talks about what kind of products you sell. I generally recommend also including a highlight that has customer feedback or testimonials, again, just as an opportunity to have that social proof and give people who are maybe new to your profile the opportunity to see what other people are saying. And then maybe if you are someone who has been featured in the media or is active on other platforms, you could have a highlight that sort of accentuates where people can find you elsewhere. General rule of thumb to consider is that you shouldn't have more than 5 to 6 highlight categories. Anything that requires me to swipe all the way over, you just need to be more concise. And that being said, one thing I am very adamant about is making sure that everything that is saved to a highlight is newer than 52 weeks. Because generally, in the eyes of the consumer, if people see stuff that's over a year old, they're gonna just assume it's not relevant anymore. So if you do have content that's a bit older, I would just recommend going through and either reposting or recreating it and then updating it to that same highlight. So generally speaking, I tend to do this every 6 months or so, which is why I haven't got around to updating it yet. But in the event that you do decide to set aside a day where you update those things, I usually just start by posting a story being like, hey, I'm going to be updating my highlights, so feel free to just tab through the next few slides, because a lot of the people that are already following you probably already know the things that you're going to be sharing, but that's totally up to you if you want to do that. Okay, bonus tip number 2 for Instagram stories is a little bit of a pet peeve for mine, and that is not using text on screen in your stories. And I'm not talking about the Instagram auto captions feature. I think that's a great feature and you should absolutely be using that, but that is not all you should be using. Let's be real. Most people watch Instagram stories with the sound on their phones turned off, and most people have the attention span of a goldfish. So if you don't have title, text, or a single sentence that explains to me what you're talking about in your stories, I'm not going to bother to stick around and wait for the auto captions to fill out with what you're saying to tell me whether or not it's worth my time. People want to be able to decipher as quickly as possible whether or not the content you're posting is relevant to them. And what I'm going to do is I created this fake Instagram story. I'm going to post it up on the next slide, and it's going to show you what the difference would be between these 2 types of styles of formatting your story. Just got off a call with a client, and in that call, we were talking about friction she's feeling in her business when it comes to making sales. And I gave her some really helpful advice to help overcome that, and I thought it would be helpful to share it with you too. In case just got off a call with a client, and in that call, we were talking about friction she's feeling in her business when it comes to making sales. And I gave her some really helpful advice to help overcome that, and I thought it would be helpful to share it with you too, in case this is something. So hopefully that helped prove the point of why you should be using proper text on your stories. I hope that the information shared in this video helps you in growing your business on Instagram, and I hope it helps you to brainstorm a few new content ideas for your Instagram stories. Make sure you follow me over on Instagram to see my stories in real time. I'm always happy to help, so if you have any questions at all, you can drop them down in the comments below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!